I hate to interrupt the wonderful conversation and great lunch we were having. Wasn't that lunch great? That potato soup was phenomenal, with an F. I have the pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker for today's conference. I would like to introduce to you Rebecca Kelly with AARP. Rebecca currently serves as State Director for AARP Tennessee, a role she has held since 2005. In her work, Rebecca oversees a statewide team which includes 8 full-time staff, and get this, 1,000 volunteers. That is, yes, that's amazing. Earlier this year, Rebecca was called to Washington, D.C. for a special assignment to help inform AARP's national work from the state perspective. Rebecca has also served on Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam's Task Force on Aging, helping to reshape recommendations on caregiving, livable communities, and healthy behaviors. In all, Rebecca has more than 36 years of experience in the field of aging. In addition to her career with AARP, she has managed senior employment programs for Louisiana State Unit on Aging, was a teaching associate at Louisiana State University, and just prior to joining AARP, served as a consultant to older worker programs for the Georgia Department of Labor. A native of Tennessee, Rebecca earned her bachelor's degree from Carson-Newman University and a master's degree in public administration from Georgia State University. We are very honored to have you, and please join me in welcoming Rebecca Kelly.
Thank you, and good afternoon. It's been awesome to be with you this morning already. I wanted to come early and sort of get a sense of the conversation and the folks, and I've just been delighted. I was first interested to know what was going on here, and there is not, to my knowledge, another caregiving resource center in this state, and I was excited about that. Caregivers need all the resources you can possibly get. There's not a bad resource. Well, if it's not helpful, I guess it's bad, but I was just excited to see resources across the board, period. And when Holly called several weeks ago, I've known her for several years, and Patty, did she leave? Appreciate the work of the AAAD and those across the state. I know we have AAAD from Chattanooga here, and senior centers, we appreciate them. There's so many service providers that offer good hands-on care. But I wanted to say yes immediately for lots of reasons. I just had no idea that in the last 2 weeks I would be quite as doused in caregiving as I've been. I've talked about it a lot. I've helped a lot of people. I've informed a lot. I probably first knew that I was about to be a caregiver several Thanksgivings ago when my mom, my sister-in-law, walked in with that infamous sweet potato casserole. And she handed it to Mom, and Mom looked at me with this blank fear and said, "I don't know what to do with this." Well, my stomach flipped, and I quickly said, "Well, Mom, you could do whatever you want to with it. You could put it on the dessert table. Just sort of." And my stomach's been flipping ever since, talking to Mom as she has continued to progress down that dementia road. And then between my husband and me, we have 4 parents. We're blessed with 4 parents alive right now, between 84 and 94. My last 2 weeks have been with the 90-somethings. They're 93 and 94. They live in a home that is completely on the 2nd floor, so they walk up steps from where they park their car. We've begged, we've pleaded. All the information I've learned from my 30-something years in aging means nothing. We've begged, we've pleaded, we've offered resources, we've done everything that the books tell you to do. Well, Clyde, sweet father-in-law, bit the dust, face planted on the driveway because he was blowing the leaves on this driveway that does this. It's just straight up. And he only had about 15 more minutes. Fell, broke his nose, ER. A week later, and this was about a week ago, 2nd ER trip, nose bleeding, middle of the night, scary. Mom-in-law called. And then we went through 2 ER visits, and then she slipped. Long story short, we installed a pacemaker in her a week ago Wednesday. And so I've spent 5 24-hour nights and days in the Centennial Hospital in Nashville. And Monday of this week, we enrolled her in a skilled facility and him in an independent facility under the same roof, which was no small feat. But yeah, we love caregivers. We are caregivers. AARP loves caregivers, and we try to do everything we possibly can to support all of us. You're going to hear some things repeated today, but I think that's okay. And some statistics might be a little different, but the enormity of the numbers of the statistics is what is staggering. Rosalind Carter has been referenced a couple of times already, but I love it that she said people generally fit in 4 categories. They either have been caregivers, or they currently are, or they will be, or they're going to need a caregiver. I just want to stop here. How many of you either are caregivers now, or you think you will be very soon? That is almost all of us, almost. So you obviously know that story. So I've sort of divided the presentation today from AARP's perspective into 3: research, advocacy, and resources. Part of what attracted me to AARP early on was the resources, research, and public policy and resources, all of those really. But we've done some robust research, and I'll reference some of that about caregiving in particular. Dale already referred to our Valuing the Invaluable piece. It's probably the largest, most recent piece, and if you haven't seen that, just go to our national website. It's aarp.org, and you can key in just about whatever you need to look for, but look that one up. It's worth flipping through. You also can get to our Caregiving Resource Center by just aarp.org/caregiving, and you can use any of that information. We just ask that you credit us with it. But if you're doing newsletters or speeches or presentations or just need some guidance, please use it. That's what it's there for. But just a few statistics about who we are as caregivers. In 2013, about 40 million family caregivers in the United States provide an estimated 37 billion hours to an adult with limited activities of daily living. The estimated economic value of their unpaid contributions was about $470 billion. So 40 million, 37 billion hours, $470 billion worth of unpaid care. Just for comparison, Walmart is the world's largest company, and their annual sales is $477 billion. So the amount of unpaid care that caregivers provide annually is about the revenue of Walmart. The average U.S. caregiver is a 49-year-old woman who works outside the home, spends about 20 hours a week providing care to her mom for about 5 years. That's just a snippet profile. In 2020, our Home Alone family caregivers providing complex chronic care piece of survey found that about 46% of family caregivers performed medical and nursing tasks for care recipients. 78% were managing multiple medications. It's becoming critically important to support caregivers as our population ages. In 2010, there were 7.2 potential family caregivers for every person age 80 and older. By 2030, that ratio will fall to 4 to 2, and in 2050, it will fall to 3 to 1. So the number of potential caregivers compared to the people who need care is reducing, and it's going to take all of us to provide what we need. Some Tennessee-specific data that you may have already seen. Currently, AARP conducted a survey last year of about 800. We did a phone survey of about 800 folks, and these were voters, likely voters, 45 and over. So it was not just AARP members, it was across the board in voters. We've estimated 981,000 caregivers right now, just at 1 million, and who are calling themselves caregivers. They're qualifying themselves as caregivers. We talked at lunch about many of us are just taking care of somebody we love, and we don't call ourselves a caregiver. So of those people who identified as caregivers, there are just under 1 million. They provided a total of 913 million, just under 1 billion hours of care, estimated value of $10.3 million. tremendous number of people providing care in this state. A little more about the Tennessee-specific survey. 60% of our survey respondents identified themselves as a caregiver. Of those who did not, 55% said that they expect to be a caregiver for a loved one sometime in the future. Now, again, this was voters 45 and over. So this is not an aging select group of people. This is general population, likely voters over 45. So you could basically say that caregiving is important to 82% of Tennesseans right now. So the fact that you are embarking on a resource center here, you have the potential to touch 82% of the population, which is huge. The gender split, about 46% are male and 54% are female. Pretty close. Caregivers perform a wide range of tasks. 90% said they help with grocery shopping. 86% provide transportation. 85% help with household chores. 84% prepare meals. And then caregivers help with home health duties. 70% manage medications. And 69% provide other nursing and medical tasks. So a large majority do a wide variety of activities. We found that nearly 1/3 of the state's caregivers are also maintaining full-time jobs, and that brings a whole nother set of issues. 72% have had to modify their work schedule who are working, and 25% said they had to modify that work schedule at least once a week. So it's impacting our companies. The quicker employers realize the impact that caregivers are having on their own workplace and offer flexibility, the better that's going to be. The support for working caregivers is critically important. And as a side, AARP just this year offered our own employees 2 weeks, in addition to vacation and sick. It's pretty amazing. 2 weeks of caregiving leave on top of that. I just took 4 days of that 2 weeks of caregiving leave. Had no idea. I was so excited, and then it got real. It shouldn't surprise any of us that 90% of caregivers reported feeling emotional stress in this survey. A close second to stress was not getting enough rest. And when I heard that compared to Alzheimer's, I'm sunk. 84% said managing the work and family balance is an ongoing challenge. Not getting enough exercise and being able to take care of household duties were both cited by 83% of the respondents. Again, these are likely voters over 45 in Tennessee. 94% of our survey respondents indicated that it's extremely important to have services to allow people to stay in their own homes. When this first came out, we were talking about 94% want services to stay in their own homes. Somebody said the other 60% didn't understand the question. I think we all want to stay in our own homes as long as we possibly can. 90% would like to see better access to home health care providers as well. 89% need more options for end-of-life hospice care. A lot of good information in this Tennessee-specific survey, and let me know. You can access it on AARP Tennessee's website, and that's just aarp.org/TN, and it'll take you to this research. Nurses who make home visits is a need for 84%, and 83% would like more transportation services to accommodate the special needs of the people they love. Advocacy, we are working hard in Congress and in the state legislature to just raise the visibility of caregiving as a major issue in this country. It's a complex undertaking, as is anything in Congress, but the one thing that we've able to do so far is supported the ACT caucus. Some of you are familiar with this, I'm sure. ACT stands for Assisting Caregivers Today. And the purpose is it's a bipartisan group that's bringing this together, and it's basically to elevate the needs of caregivers, the challenges and the opportunities that individuals face as caregivers, and the needs to help live independently. We're pleased that Congressman Diane Black is a member of the ACT caucus, and we're working individually with all of the other members of Congress. So when you see yours, please encourage them to support that as well. I think I'm going to skip over the rest of that that's been covered earlier. When you saw me writing, I was Xing through parts of this that we've already covered. We're also working hard in Tennessee on advocacy-related issues. We are working on a CARE Act right now that you may have heard about. We are working through the regulatory means, but the CARE Act stands for Caregiving, Advise, Record, and Enable. And there are 3 pieces of this, and it may sound real simple, but to some of you, you're going to understand the importance of it. When a loved one enters a hospital, this would require that the caregiver's name is just entered in the record, that that patient can designate whoever they want to be as the caregiver, and that is listed on the record. The second thing is that the caregiver is notified at discharge. How many times are you across the country or you're not where you need to be and your loved one is being discharged from the hospital and you literally cannot get there? And so we're saying that there needs to be at least a 4-hour notice that you're about to discharge your loved one. And then the third one is that if there are any medical tasks that need to be done post-hospital stay, then those tasks are explained to the caregiver. Many hospitals are already doing these kinds of things. This legislation would just make sure that all of them do and that caregivers are recognized. As this continues to move forward again, I encourage all of you who are in touch with your legislators, please talk to them about the importance of caregiving and the importance of making some of these actions real and across the board. Nurse delegation is another one that we are looking at and are encouraging, and some of you may understand this very well. I know we have quite a few nurses in the room. It's the ability for a registered nurse to delegate certain medical tasks to a home health care provider. Many of these tasks are already being delegated to family care members, but they're not being delegated to home health providers necessarily, and we think that this would also allow people to stay in their home longer. It would lower the cost. And it's completely in charge, the registered nurse that's in charge of that case would still have complete authority. One at a time, if the registered nurse has any concerns about the provision of those tasks, then they don't have to allow it. So the registered nurse is still in charge. We're just trying to make things more simple, easier, more available to the loved one and to the family. And then this nurse delegation legislation would also protect from liability. So nobody would be held liable if something went wrong. The registered nurse would be covered under their normal liability clauses with their work. Resources. We have a caregiving resource center. Ours is online. And so, again, it's aerp.org/caregiving. If you haven't been there, please go. Lots of good information, and again, you can use it. We have information about Medicare and Medicaid, hiring a home care worker. We try to connect people to other caregivers in their areas, cover areas of finance and health and insurance. And then we have a toll-free resource line. We're very aware that many of our caregivers may not be computer savvy. And so we have a phone number. I will give it to you if you'd like. It's 1-877-333-5885. Again, that toll-free resource line for caregiving resources is 1-877-333-5885. And the online access is aerp.org/caregiving. One of my favorite resources that we have at AARP is something called Prepare to Care. Some of you may have seen it as well. It's been a publication, it's online, and then we have recently developed a seminar on Prepare to Care. The premise is that the better prepared we are, the easier it will be. Unlike my own experience, you do the best you can. You try to prepare and, life still happens. But if you can do this and you can get your families to do this, it will help tremendously. Most families don't have a plan. My mother-in-law kept saying, when something happens, we'll figure it out. And that drove me nuts. So I would ask another question to give me the information that I felt like I needed for when that did happen, because I knew it was going to. But plans are so important. Where is our caregiver that said, I'm just a caregiver? Is he still here? I just wanted to hug your neck. I'm going to hug your neck after lunch. You are playing the most important role anybody can ever play. Um, the So you know that being a caregiver, and we talk about this in preparing to care, may start with driving, may start with getting groceries, and then graduate from there to medical and medication and all kinds of important things, handling bills, even to end-of-life issues. But having a good framework of help and people around you to help will make a tremendous difference. So the Prepare to Care breaks caregiving down into 5 parts, our resource guide. The first one is starting the conversation, and sometimes that's the hardest. We talk about doing that often around holidays. The family is home. You don't really want to talk about depressing things, and yet that's the perfect time to sort of say, well, what do you think? How's it feeling? And we literally, in this guide, give you some suggestions on how to start the conversation. Look for an opening, respect your loved one. The loved one, as long as they're cognizant, should always make those decisions and be involved in their own care. There are tips on how to answer the, I just don't want to talk about it, and sort of getting around that in this resource guide. Forming a team is the second tip and recommendation that we make. It is extremely difficult to do this by yourself, and there are so many people around that really do want to help. It doesn't have to be members who live close to you. There may be some members of your team of caregivers that do live close to you, but then people who are at a longer distance can help as well. They may be the one to organize the technology and use their own talents and strengths to do that. There's so much with the technology now can help with meal organizing and driving and transportation and paying bills. Long distance caregivers or family members can help pay bills and with financial assistance. And then the third one is making a plan. Just plan for the inevitable. Try to anticipate whatever you think might happen and know who you would call on when that happens. With the hold a team meeting, get the team together, meet with your caregiving team as often as you think you need to, set some goals, delegate responsibilities, and include the person receiving the care as long as you possibly can. They're going to feel better to know that there's a plan in place for them. Keep everybody informed, take notes, just like you would a business meeting. It helps tremendously to do this. I've actually tried this with my parents, and we're doing okay. Mother is still involved. Dad's very involved. Dad gets it completely. And then several of us are trying to sort of put things around to just support the two of them. The fourth one is finding support and that scope of care and realizing that you have extra support. When people say, let me know how I can help, think of how they can. Come sit, have somebody sit on Mondays or at night or bring food or whatever. We so often feel like, especially as family members, that it's our responsibility, and it's just not practical that you can give the sole responsibility for the care. You've heard a lot today about community resources. I think somebody mentioned, Holly, I think you mentioned the 1,500 different entities to provide care. That's incredible. But use those directories, and I know that the AAADs have those resource directories across the state, but use those. Trained social workers, nurses, this room is full of people like that who can help. And then number 5, and maybe most important, care for yourself. My mother has told me from ground up, if you're not good, then you're not good for anybody else. I think about that a lot. But truly take care of yourself. Some of you may know Peter Rosenberger. Peter has taken care of his wife for 30-something years. She was in a car accident right after they got married. He's a good friend of Jeff Foxworthy's. And Jeff is just irreverent, as you know. And he actually, Peter and Jeff put together 10 ways you know you're a caregiver. You know you're a caregiver if. I'll let you go to our website and look at some of those. They're hysterical. But it's important to laugh. It's important to do things that are good for you and to take care of yourself. But Peter says, take care of yourself and tap into those resources. We've talked a little bit about finances. Do everything you can to protect your own finances and try not to deplete your financial assets on somebody else, because you're going to need them. And so there are some tips in the Caregiving Resource Center on how to do that and how to get some financial resources that may help your loved ones and leverage those. Our newest resource is something that we're calling Careversations. My communications director hates this. He says that's not a word, but you know the idea. The intent is good. But it's sort of the guided conversations. Hopefully we don't get to grope, I think is what Dale said earlier. But yeah, it's the idea is that you have some facilitated conversations with other caregivers just for support, and that you use each other for support, and the solutions that you have found are support for each other. And so those careversations can help a lot, conversations with other caregivers. We also participated in a study called Caregiving and Technology. What do caregivers want? We talked about that earlier too. I was fascinated with the technology session this morning and excited that tech is going to do some real progressive and innovative things. I'm excited to come back in less than a year, I hope, and see what all they've done. But in that research findings, several findings from that piece of research, by 2020, and that's less than 4 years from now, 2020 is less than 4 years away, the population of caregivers is estimated to reach 45 million people, caring for 117 million people. The integration of caregiving and technology has not hit a tipping point yet, but in fact, the study revealed that many caregivers perceive technology will not be better than traditional means of care. If you dig a little deeper, however, the younger 50, of course, are completely ready and excited about technology, but the over 50 really aren't, and they're still hesitant, just as they are across the board. But 3/4 of the survey respondents said that they're interested in technologies that can help them with medication refills, delivery and adherence to medications, and others with calendaring and scheduling. As we said earlier, so much opportunity already for technology with helping. Emerging technology, we talked about earlier, telemedicine is huge. I just imagine the days when we really are getting a lot of our medical care from our desk or from home and consultation with doctors and even physical examinations, and them able to see what's going on with us from a distance. That's certainly diagnosing of illnesses. And then managing medications, all kinds of opportunities with telemedicine, and we are very supportive, AARP is, in funding and supporting research opportunities and the greater availability of telemedicine. Somebody mentioned broadband earlier. We're also supporting that in the legislature. You may or may not know that we're encouraging broadband access across the state. Chattanooga, you're welcome. It's a huge need in the rural areas especially. And Chattanooga has set the pace. You probably know that there are 7 areas that are already offering broadband and free Wi-Fi access in the county of, I think it's Bradley County. I'll just be open here, and I may be talking to some AT&T and Comcast people right here in this room, but I'll tell you the private sector's anxious about this, and they are our opponents in the legislature. So if you are in a rural area and you need broadband access, I encourage you to talk about why you need it and specific examples to your legislators. Last year was the first real year that this took off, and we're anticipating that it will take off again, that it will continue in the 2017 session. So when you're chatting with them, please talk to them about broadband. And then finally, we're supporting volunteer driving programs. I'm excited at the number of programs that are popping up that are just volunteer-led, that are helping solve the transportation problem. We first knew about this in the Blount County Smiles program. Many of you probably know about that one. It's just volunteers driving other volunteers. And we like it because one of the requirements is that they have to go through AARP's driver safety program to be a driver, a volunteer driver. But it just makes so much sense. My aunt and uncle they were in their 90s, and they had somebody in their church who was 70-something drive them around. They went to lunch. They enjoyed each other's company, and it was a huge support to the family. In Clarksville, we have supported a public sector effort where people over 65 in Clarksville can ride the buses there free of charge, and their ridership went up 171%. So obviously, if we've got public transportation in those places, let's look at changing policies so that people over 65 can ride free, and then teach them how to ride it and where to go to get on it. So they're, that full circle of education as well. We have supported efforts like Lyft and Uber. The concern right now is you have to have a smartphone to qualify for Uber at least. And so we're looking at ways that there can be Uber-like, Lyft-like transportation programs for people who don't have a smartphone. No shortage of activities to do and good work to be done. But as long as there are people to love, we're going to be there trying to love and help and support them. Thank you so much for all you do. I'm delighted to be in this circle today.